everybody, to this episode of The Monthly Blend, a monthly video podcast brought to you by Next, powered by Shulman Rogers and the Connectpreneur community. I'm Tien Wong, founder and host of the Big Idea Connectpreneur community, which is a global community of over 30,000 investors, founders, and business leaders from around the world. I'm also CEO of Opus 8, which helps companies and fund managers raise money through our network of nearly 4,000 accredited private investors, angels, and family offices throughout the U.S. Along with my co-host, Anthony Millen, who's the founder and chair of Next, powered by Shulman Rogers, we're pleased to bring you this monthly video podcast, which covers trends, information, and interesting research and tidbits, as well as fascinating interviews with game changers and newsmakers here in the Washington, D.C., Baltimore Metroplex. And today, we're thrilled to have a tremendous group of amazing game changers here in the Metroplex. And you guys are fitting in great with the mission that Anthony and I had 2 years ago when we started this podcast to increase awareness of cool, innovative happenings in our region and to help break down the silos that we're unfortunately known for, and to serve as a mechanism to do our part to help bring the region together and help foster innovation and entrepreneurship. And as I mentioned earlier, we're thrilled to have a conversation with three of the region's top accelerator, incubator leaders who are also investing. And they've had a tremendous impact on the startup and early stage community here in Baltimore, DC region. And I would like to name them and then have them do a little self-introduction. Today, we're joined by Jeff Cherry, who is the managing general partner of Conscious Ventures Partners and the founder and executive director of Conscious Venture Labs. We have Kate Goodall, who's the CEO and founder of Halcyon. And last but not least, Adam Phillips, who's a managing director at Techstars. Jeff, why don't you lead the way?
You're going to let me go before Kate? That doesn't even seem right.
Well, I was going to do alphabetical. But, you know what? Let's have Kate go first. Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll start.
Well played.
You're right.
Well,
I don't want to be canceled for being,
Kate should look. In every room that Kate's in, she should always go first.
there you go.
I mean,
Kate,
the problem with that is it's hard to follow. It's hard to follow Kate, but get the best out of her.
Especially if she starts singing. Okay, then
Yeah.
she's got an amazing voice and great stage presence.
Really? Interesting.
You should see. There's videos of her. She's
Well,
amazing.
now I feel like we have to talk about that, but we'll do that later.
So, okay, why don't we, I'll just introduce Kate then. So I'd like to welcome, first of all, Kate Goodall. Kate, welcome. If you could tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you, Tien. Thank you, Jeff. So my name's Kate Goodall. I am the co-founder and CEO of Halcyon, which is an early stage incubator for mission-driven startups. We've been operating about a decade, so I feel quite old. And we're working with startups from all over the world. But we do have programs specific to the DMV, as well as programs specific to Sub-Saharan Africa, the Middle East, North Africa, Latin American climate resilience. And we also now oversee a number of capital instruments, including an early stage venture fund.
Thank you, Kate. Jeff Cherry, how are you doing today, Jeff?
I'm good, Tien. Thanks. It's great to see you and great to see all of my friends here online. Thanks for having us again, Anthony and Tien. So as Tien said, my name is Jeff Cherry. I am the founder of the Conscious Venture Lab and the founder and managing general partner of Conscious Venture Partners. We started the Conscious Venture Lab just about the same time as Halcyon House, maybe a couple of months later in 2013. So we've been at it for about a decade as well. The Conscious Venture Lab is a early stage accelerator, again, for mission-driven entrepreneurs. We have sort of three legs of the stool we think about. First is we think that businesses, the winning businesses of the future, are not going to be businesses that focus myopically on shareholders. Rather, they're going to be businesses that understand how to create value for all of their stakeholders. So this idea of stakeholder or conscious capitalism, we think there are smart people everywhere. There's just not opportunity everywhere. So we try to do a better job of getting into communities of underrepresented founders and supporting them. And we're looking for ideas that we think are making society more equitable, more just, more joyous, more equitable, more sustainable. So those are the sort of things that we focus on. We ran the accelerator for about 4 years before we raised our first fund. We were investing, I had a few partners investing off our own balance sheet. And then we raised a small fund in 2018, proof of concept. It went pretty well. And we are just about to close our second fund here within the next, I would say, 30 to 60 days, depending on how things turn out. But happy to be here as always, Tien, and looking forward to the conversation.
Great. Thank you so much, Jeff. And Adam, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm Phillips, Managing Director at Techstars, and we do early stage venture capital investments. We're an accelerator, so we have them all over the country, actually all over the world. I get the privilege of running the one up in Baltimore, the Equitech Accelerator. So very excited to be here and talk about what's happening in the DMV.
Awesome. I'd love to turn segment one over to my co-host, Anthony Millen, who is a venture capitalist with the Third Sphere and Urban Us family of venture funds. He's also a serial entrepreneur and also one of the nation's foremost startup attorneys. He's the founder and chair of Next, powered by Shulman Rogers, which is disrupting the way that legal services are developed in the market with top-tier attorneys at a fixed price package type productization of legal services. And I want to congratulate you, Anthony. You've been awarded some great accolades by Legal Week and Legal Times for being the startup emerging company law firm of the year. And I believe you're up for another couple of awards. So kudos to you and take it away.
Great. Thank you, Tien. And thank you, Jeff and Kate and Adam, for joining us today. Kate and Jeff, during your introductions, you both spoke about the journey of starting with incubators and accelerators, and after several years of success and proof of concept of what you're doing, now both have committed capital funds. And I'd just be interested to hear a little bit about how that journey and evolution went from the accelerators to committed capital and kind of what that means for you going forward, having both arms now on the accelerator side and incubator side and the fund side. And maybe, Kate, we'll start with you.
Oh, I was going to hand off to Jeff since I went first last time.
All right, Jeff.
I'm okay. Happy to do it. So yeah, it's been a journey, obviously. I think that when we first started Conscious Venture Lab, we had every intention of launching a fund in the very beginning. But it just felt like, I came directly before that. I was in the hedge fund space. I was running a pretty big $700 million hedge fund in New York. And it was a different environment and a different business. So it just felt like first we should understand what we were doing before we went out and started spending other people's money. So we tested different, lengths of the curriculum, the accelerator program, and, all sorts of different iterations of it over the first 4 years before we felt comfortable enough, I think, to go out and raise money. But I also think that, and we were investing, not through a fund, but basically off the balance sheet of the company. We had some early successes. Lots of people know about, we were the first investor in a company called Hungry Harvest, which has been a very successful company here in Baltimore. And that sort of drove interest. I think the other thing that happened, and it's still sort of iterating for us, is that we started we were in Columbia, Maryland. Ken Ullman, who was a county executive at the time, knew what we were doing and sort of gave us some money to start the accelerator there. And we had to match with investment capital. But as Tien knows, I was a DC guy. So I was living in DC and making a commute to Columbia and got tired of that commute and moved to Baltimore in January of 2015. And then in April of 2015, a guy named Freddie Gray got killed in the back of a police van. It was sort of George Floyd before George Floyd. We didn't see Freddie Gray get killed on TV, but it had a very similar impact here in Baltimore. And that's what started us to think more intently, I think, Anthony, about investing in underrepresented founders. So I think that those things all came together to sort of start to drive us to think about raising capital and raising a fund. It has not been easy. It's been a lot harder than I thought it was going to be honest with you. But I think we're getting some traction. Our second fund will be 10, maybe 15x the size of our first fund. So we definitely are getting some traction, but it's been challenging. It's been a challenging iteration.
And in terms of with that capital, how do you see that just being able to grow with the companies that you're coming through your accelerator?
Yeah, I think it's a few things, but certainly one of the rationales that we had for expanding the size of the fund so greatly was that we were not able to follow on and continue to support some of the most successful companies. So that was one iteration. But I also think that, you've got a great sort of cross section of what's happening in the DMV here online between Kate and Adam. The other thing that started to happen, and Kate can talk about this as well, since she and I started these businesses, in 2012, 2013, this has turned into more of an ecosystem. It used to be a collection of assets that were sort of separate and people doing things on their own. It's turned into more of an ecosystem. So now not only are we able to support companies coming through our program, but we're able to support companies come through other folks' programs. So I think that we've had a number of Halcyon companies come through the Conscious Venture Lab. We're in negotiation with a few Techstars companies to invest in them right now as we speak. So I think that all of those things sort of have come together to make a larger fund make more sense.
Kate, so how has this been for Halcyon and your journey, starting with the accelerator and moving to a fund? And what do you see being able to do now that you have both of those?
Yeah, Jeff and I really have led parallel lives. We started investing and creating a fund because of three things, really. We had a unique value proposition, we saw a need, and there was a profound opportunity. I would say that, because Halcyon has a really unique set of robust and holistic supports for entrepreneurs, and because we're looking for people that are solving problems, these massive intractable problems, whether they be social or environmental, we attract a diverse set of entrepreneurs and we seek to support them, from the earliest stages, really democratizing who gets to do this by disrupting networks, by providing access, creating a really unique community. So while we're pursuing impact, we are also looking to democratize who gets to be an entrepreneur. And because of that, we saw firsthand very early on that certainly for our women entrepreneurs and our founders of color, it was harder to get into rooms to get meetings. When you were in the room, you were going to get 70% or more preventative questions than promotion questions. And then at the end of the day, if you were lucky enough to get a term sheet, it was going to be crappier terms, right? At the same time, we were hearing from VCs, oh, we'd love to invest in women and diverse founders, but there's just not a pipeline. And we're like, you're crazy. And at the same time, we saw our companies growing and scaling at rapid rates, right? We've had the biggest unicorn in Africa come through Halcyon. We've had food companies that people completely underestimated who now have Jennifer Garner as their CMO. And we wanted to get some of the upside. We don't take equity up front, which is part of how we think we align really well with early stage entrepreneurs, with entrepreneurs that we're trying to really assist. But having a fund was also an opportunity for us to align with that upside and continue to help to grow these companies. So it was a number of things, but it really made a lot of sense. Alongside the fund, we've also created an angel network. We now have nearly 50 active impact angels, as well as a microloan fund, which gives up to $25,000 in loan capital for companies to use if they're either not going to raise venture or perhaps they need a first rung on the ladder even before that. No collateral, no credit check, 4% fixed interest. They can skip a month if they need to. All of these things, all of these instruments have been designed because we've listened to our entrepreneurs and we're meeting their needs.
Great. No, it's amazing the companies, both you and Jeff was talking about coming through Conscious Venture Labs and the fact you both have these committed funds available to continue to support companies there and in the ecosystem is wonderful. Adam, I would love to hear a little bit because you're seeing both the local Techstars, both in Baltimore and the new Techstars in DC, and you're also part of a broader global network that works with so many startups. What are you seeing in terms of founders raising capital in our region versus kind of other regions, and in terms of co-investors in rounds that you're coming into, or in terms of companies coming through Techstars having the ability to working with them to get follow-on funding? A lot of people are, really interested in hearing what you're seeing from your perspective on the ground in terms of investors and trends that you're seeing.
Sure. Yeah. And just to echo a little bit of what Kate and Jeff were talking about, the ecosystem is really hard to overstate how important that is and how important it is to have flexible finance vehicles sort of at every stage. There's so many there's so many ways you can win, quote unquote, in this game. And I feel like it's so important to have flexible finance throughout that. So standing funds, whether you're doing, early stuff that's replacing friends and family rounds at zero interest or low interest, whatever it is, like there's so many ways that people can sort of on-ramp into this. So critically important. And I'm very glad that I was primarily working out of Chicago before, and it's great to be able to sort of be working where I lived because I love this ecosystem. So in terms of follow-on, so a couple things, the environment has tightened up, of course. The ecosystem, I think, though, plays a big role in sort of making sure that the relationships and the expectations that were in place before, you can sort of slide new companies in those slots and it remains, and the follow-on sort of remains in place. So Techstars has its own follow-on fund. I know we specifically have gotten a little more active even. So just in terms of a trend, I know people are sort of doubling down on the people that they already know a little bit. We're doing that. Our follow-on fund has been a little bit more active with the companies that are coming through our, all of our Techstars accelerators. We're also seeing, I think, more and more the ecosystem sort of throughout Techstars I feel like is pulsating a lot more. Like a lot more people are reaching out and trying to find out, okay, tell me something about this company. We're having more of these, the diligence, I guess, has gone up. And in some ways that's a good thing because that means people are looking at deals and they're, maybe they're being putting a little more scrutiny on them, but they're also exercising the ecosystem. And I think that that's a great thing. But again, it points back to how important that is, those relationships, the expectations, who knows who. And this is sort of traditionally one of the ways that I think Black and brown founders and women founders get locked out. And so that has its own downside as well. There's a plus side to that, but there's also a downside. In terms of follow-on funding, I think overall, there's been a trend down. I think the numbers there's no doubt, like women founders, I think got funded at half the rate, I think, of last year. So there really is, the environment is tighter and people are definitely kind of spending more time looking at these deals and I think doubling down on who they perceive to be their winners. So we're going to ride this. I would expect to see, this pattern persist for a little while. But yeah, we just keep pushing forward.
Adam, you talk about, and Jeff and Kate have both referred a number of times today to our ecosystem in this region. I'd love to hear from each of you kind of what excites you most about kind of the current ecosystem and the way you've seen it maturing and growing. And then, one thing that you think we should be focusing on as a group to continue to improve and expand it. Maybe Jeff, will start with you this time.
Well, the thing I'm not excited about is it seems that every time I get a term sheet or every time I get a note, it comes with your name on it, from every entrepreneur. Every time someone sends me, no, I'm kidding, but not kidding about that. But it's actually really good because it causes us to do less work, right? Because we know what, the documents that you guys have done. We know the companies you work with. It's always been interesting. Someone will call me and says, Anthony's my attorney. I'm like, okay, great. Well, that means at least I didn't read only half of this note because I know it's going to be good. But the ecosystem, what I'm excited about, I'm excited that, as Kate said, we sort of have grown up in this thing together. But I'm excited that there are more people that we're both connected together with more people that we both know now, right? Because for a long time, it was Kate and I, and, there was people on periphery that we knew, but it seems like it's coalescing more. And I think it's exciting because if you're an entrepreneur, you're going on a path, right? You saw an idea and you're trying to get somewhere else. Let's call it Series A or whatever, right? But at least there's sort of a defined path there, right? So you need certain types of support, certain types of network, and certain types of capital at each stage along that path. And one of the things we haven't had before is that we've had too many gaps in that path. I think we're starting to fill the gaps in that path, which makes us more attractive to entrepreneurs coming from other places. We've already got, between, Baltimore and DC, great places to live, sort of tons of things to do, unbelievable transportation, some of the best airports in the world, all of that stuff. But we hadn't had that sort of path figured out. So I think that getting better at that is really exciting for me. I think that the thing that we need to do better at collectively, and it's not, I would say it's nobody's fault, but we just got to get better at it. I still think that there's too much money on the sidelines, right? There's too many people who have been successful. Montgomery County is the richest county in the country practically, right? And same thing with, Baltimore County and surrounding areas. So there's a lot of capital on the sidelines that it's relatively conservative. And I think that if we could get some of that capital off the sidelines and grow some of the local funds, I mean, I'm sure that Kate wishes she had more money. I wish I had more money. Adam's got a benefit of having this national network, but we all could use more capital. And it's not just to capital for the sake of capital. It's capital to make sure that we're continuing to plug those holes that the entrepreneurs need to have plugged as they go along this path. So I'm excited about that. That path is starting to sort of fill out so that someone can look at this community and say, I can go all the way. But I still think that we need to get some more capital, and some of the capital gets to get off the sidelines.
Thank you. Kate?
Yeah, at risk of sounding repetitive, I will say, maybe I'll start with sort of like the thing that I think could improve. And Anthony, I apologize in advance for what I'm about to say. But one of the reasons I think this region is too conservative is that it's 20% lawyers, right? Like the federal government by nature means that we are a very litigiously weighted community, and lawyers know how to assess risk. And venture is a game of assessing risk, but it's also ultimately a game of taking smart bets. And you have to get that balance right. And I think DC is a little bit too heavily weighted on the, you've got to have a gazillion proof points. We're a nice balance to the Bay Area, which I think drove some of these crazy valuations that needed reharnessing, right? And the game needed to kind of come into reality a little bit. But I do think that, to Jeff's point, we can be a bit conservative, generally speaking, in DC. And I look forward to that changing. I think it is changing. And I think that, the ecosystem here is one that I treasure. I think everyone on this call probably treasures. And I salute Jeff and his building of that. I salute Tien and his building of that. When we all started, it didn't look like it does today. I think we all work very collaboratively because of the nature of a lot of long-term relationships to help there be a one-door entry for the region, right? If you come in and I can't help you, I'll try and figure out who can. And that is something lovely and pretty unique, I think, to the greater Washington area. One thing that Halcyon's been doing recently to do our part in inclusive investment breakfasts. So quarterly, we'll host anyone who's doing anything in investing around an inclusive economy. And those have been really well attended. And there are a lot of people operating with that thesis in this region, which is really exciting to me.
Great. Thank you, Kate. And Adam, before we hand it back to Tien, what excites you the most? And what do you see as kind of a challenge?
Yeah, I'll also be repetitive. I would say, just to speak to the challenge first, I do think it's the money issue because I'm a reformed lawyer. I'm still a lawyer, but I lived in that world, and it's risk off, right? And we're in the world of business, you're kind of risk on. So you're understanding risk, but we're risk on in business, and we're risk off in investing, and risk off on, in law. And so oftentimes that does sort of skew the thing. But I think what is a challenge is also sort of hitting different types of funding. Like there's a need for early stage, replacing the friends and family, almost philanthropic funding. That's, philanthropic investing at very early stage grant level kind of funding. And then there's also the sort of growth capital, that Series A or growth, just you're doing really, really well in your neighborhood and you want to expand to the next neighborhood kind of capital. And so those sorts of differentiated capital sometimes get lost, and sort of the need for all of them gets lost, because sometimes we're risk off rather than risk on. But there's tons of, like, Jeff was saying, there's tons of capital available, one of the wealthiest enclaves. So we'll get there. I would say one of the very exciting things is that people are starting to understand that path. And that's critically important too, like business owners or just even entrepreneurs who are interested in starting anything are understanding, like, okay, I can jump in here and I can grow there. I can jump in small business. I can grow a regional business. I can jump in startup and end up, Series A, or there's different kinds of exits. Like all the just vocabulary and understanding of the path is so important to sort of setting expectations and, managing expectations too, when it comes to how you want to grow. So That's very exciting. People understanding that there's so many paths you can go with this is, that's a hugely positive sign. And that puts us in my opinion, that puts us on the right path towards really being successful.
Fantastic. Well, thank you. Tien, I'm going to hand it back to you.
All right, great. So we don't have a ton of time left, but I have a couple of quick lightning round questions, if you will. And I want to first of all applaud all three of you and your organizations for your intentional commitment to investing in underrepresented founders. That's something that's very near and dear to Anthony and myself. A couple quick questions for each of you. What percentage of your portfolio is invested in underrepresented founders? And the $1 million question, do you have any preliminary data on whether or not diverse teams are over or underperforming non-diverse teams?
I'll start. Mine is the smallest current portfolio in my direct investments with Techstars. It's my broader portfolio, kind of my past, and we'll talk about, although that number is close. But Techstars wise, I have 72% basically is computed as we've computed at underrepresented founders. That's partially due to the mandate with working with Equitech, but mostly just because I found these great founders I want to work with. So that is founding teams and CEOs as well. And in terms of preliminary data, I think that is starting to come in. It's not just us. It's sort of nationwide as we're looking at working with underrepresented founders. It's really, it's all about differentiation, right? Like investing is a game of finding edges or finding niches and finding differentiators to say, I'm over here and you're over here and the growth factor over here. Sure, if we start in a different area, it can look different initially, but the growth factor can be 10x over here and can only ever be 2x over here. So I think we are starting to see that data come back. I think it'll only increase, and I'm excited about it.
Awesome. Jeff, how about you?
We're close to Adam, I think. We've got about in Fund 2, about 68% of our capital invested in underrepresented founders. We track it across minority founders, but about 68% of that is invested in underrepresented founders. And look, I don't know, we don't have any specific data yet. We're pretty early. So first fund was very small checks. So we haven't had any exits. We've got some markup, some, mark to market. And I think that that's showing a definite lean in that direction that diverse teams are more successful. I think that it's, we decided early on that we weren't going to be like Backstage or where we said that we only invest in one thing. And part of the reason we decided that is that because I thought that gave detractors another way to think differently about our fund. Well, if you only do that, the numbers don't matter because you're not opening the thing up to competition. So we say that we are really a true meritocracy, but we actually mean it. We get into those communities and find those entrepreneurs. And that's why we've been able to invest 68%. And the proof will be in the pudding. But so far, what we're seeing is fantastic traction, fantastic upside. So we very strongly believe that that's going to be the case, Tien.
That's awesome. Well, kudos to both of you.
I was just going to say that we've got a lot of great data nationally that I think Adam just pointed to. Kauffman Foundation has shown that venture-backed tech companies led by women achieve 12% higher ROI. They've also shown that non-white founding teams have 30% higher returns when cash is returned to investors. And in the Halcyon fund, we've distributed about 80% of our capital to ventures with a woman founder and nearly 70% to Black and Brown-led ventures. So we're doing that because we think that they are leading the most exciting companies, but that just happens to be a distribution because that's who's in our pipeline. And we closed our fund last year, about a year ago, but we've already got 16% IRR and 2 exits, which, was surprisingly early. We're actually really excited about some of the companies that are pretty early on still. We think that their upside is going to take a bit more time and it's going to be really big. So we believe the data and we think we're going to help add to it.
Well, congratulations on all of that.
These are great numbers.
Amazing numbers. And all three of you deserve huge credit and to your teams as well. I mean, you guys are definitely moving the needle big time. And it's just amazing to see. It's really thrilling and quite inspirational. As far as this year goes, we had the tech valuation bubble last year, right? It affects everything. Wall Street affects buyouts, affects growth capital, affects, Series A and all the way down to where you all are. I guess 2 questions for this year. What's your number one goal or objective for this year? And what has been your biggest challenge so far this year?
Yeah, I would say, in some ways they're the same thing. The challenge is just setting up sort of the pipeline for the raise for those of my companies that are going to raise. And I still think that's also the main goal, is to sort of set them on that path. It's been a challenge in the sense that, the macro environment obviously is challenging. But again, like we talked about before, I think the network is working and the relationships are pulsing and people are starting to see also the traction that folks are getting already. So that really is like the zero in focus, is bring folks in, equip them, and then send them on the path out to growth. And whether growth immediately includes fundraising or not, it will, I think, in the majority of the companies, but it won't for all of them. It definitely is sort of part of the path. So I would say they're kind of the same thing.
How about you, Jeff? What's your...
Yeah. I would sort of echo that. Sort of our challenge is our opportunity, right? Our goals. I mean, we've been really intently, because we're coming to the end of our fundraising period, focused on raising capital. And so that's been a big challenge, but and obviously a huge goal, but it's also the same for our founders, right? I mean, one of the reasons that we're so intent on this is that because we think that we're seeing great deals and we want to be able to support those deals. So I think our main goal has been, sort of closing our fund, getting capital into the fund so we can support those founders. I think that we are also doing a better job now in terms of building infrastructure around how do we help our founders even if we can't, right? So one of the things that we're building a new co-investor database where we can go in and say, hey, we've got a company that's based in Maryland and doing a lot of work in Africa. Who should we turn them on to, especially if we're going to do another round with them? So can we get Kate to talk to them and have her give them some insight? So we're sort of building out more infrastructure around that issue too. I think that since we're at the end of our fundraise, we're sort of starting to focus more on that.
Got it. And Kate, I know Halcyon has a global portfolio. I mean, if you had to pick one key objective for this year, what would that be?
Yeah, I think my personal biggest challenge is just the speed at which 2023 has moved so far. I feel like I've lived a whole year in 2 months, but I think that because our companies have been earlier stage, we've been really well positioned. None of them had crazy valuations, largely because, many of them were underestimated, quite frankly. And also because those valuations really happened at the growth stage. And so we have actually watched a lot of our companies that have raised over the last year do really well. We haven't seen any down rounds. So that's been great. And it's definitely been interesting to see folks from the sort of the later end move down towards seed and pre-seed investing. So we just haven't seen sort of some of the capital problems. I'm sure that they may compound and affect us soon, but so far we've been really happy. It sort of feels like the tourists are gone, right? Like people that are in it now are in it, doubling down, really supporting. And it's good.
Yeah, I mean, you guys are anything but tourists. You guys are stalwarts, bedrocks of our community, all three organizations. And we're thrilled to have you guys here. So if our viewers wanted to get involved with CVL, Techstars, Halcyon, how can they do that? Let's say they want to mentor or they want to, help people or they want to refer in deals or maybe even be an LP in your fund. How can they get a hold of you guys?
You can absolutely reach out to me on LinkedIn or any of my teammates. And all of the things you suggested, Tien, we would be interested in.
Yeah, same with us. LinkedIn, is the easy way to do it. My email is jcherry@cvpartners.vc. So like Conscious Venture Partners.vc. But LinkedIn is probably the easiest way. One thing I didn't mention earlier, Tien, is that we launched a not-for-profit this year. So we turned the Conscious Venture Lab essentially into a not-for-profit. So we launched a thing called the Novella Center for Entrepreneurship, which is named after my mother, Novella. We launched a new website, novellacenter.org. So you can reach out there, and we're looking for support for the not-for-profit to continue doing the training that we do. So,
well, thank you for that. How about you, Adam?
That's awesome, Jeff. I want to find out more about that. I feel like there's a huge role for nonprofits in the investing world that's sort of misunderstood, that can be so well done, and you're perfectly positioned to do it. So I would love to learn more. Reaching me on LinkedIn is the best way. Adam H. Phillips, Phillips with 2 L's. If you find me there, definitely hit me on DMs and I will respond. That one I actually see. It comes to my phone. We also have a demo day, which I'm very excited about. So come to our demo day. It's going to be at M&T Bank Field, the Stadium Field. Is it Stadium or Field? I can't remember which one it is. It's going to be at the nice big place where the Raggeds play, Stadium. And we're very excited to showcase the companies that are coming through the accelerator. You'll meet everybody. You'll see everybody. It's going to be a big event. It's going to be 350, maybe 400 people there. So love to see everybody on April the 4th.
I'll definitely be there. And I've been to Jeff's demo days and Kate's demo days. So those are all available online, I'm sure, under the events tab on your website. So yeah, guys, come out and support what the great things that Jeff, Kate, and Adam are doing. And with that, I want to thank you guys and turn things back over to Anthony, who has some closing remarks.
Great. Thank you, Tien. And a big thank you, Adam, to you and Jeff and Kate for joining us today. I know we spent a lot of time talking about the ecosystem and the importance and growth and maturity of the ecosystem. And you three have played a tremendous role in that and will continue to be leaders as we continue to grow and expand what we have here in our region. So thank you so much again for joining us.